Well, hello, brothers and sisters. Welcome back to the exploration of the cave called wisdom. What Kohelet has been trying to show us how to live life under the sun with a bit of wisdom. Some traditional and some not so traditional, like going to the house of mourning to learn. And worse still is when he says wisdom won't change anything. Because on the one side, God does whatever he wants. And on the other side, we're sinners. We can't use wisdom properly. Yeah. Take note of that, by the way. The reality of our sinfulness. Put it in your pocket for later. Because now he's going to come to a conclusion. Yeah. It's already time to end our little walk through this cave where he shook up our very notion that we could live under the sun with only wisdom. And he's going to turn around and say, here's what I've learned. So, let's learn with him, shall we? He starts by saying, all this I have tested by wisdom. I said, I will be wise, but it was far from me. These words sound familiar. They sound like what we see in chapter 1 and 2. Where again, Kohelet started out by explaining how he tried to make sense of life under the sun, of the reality of Hevel, and trying to find palpableness in all of that. Same kind of words here. And all that he tried to test and make sense with wisdom, yet he keeps saying that something was far from him though. What was far from him? Don't be too quick to say it's wisdom, because in chapter 2, he clearly said wisdom stayed with him when he was trying to make sense of life through experiences. So, it's not that. It's something else. We'll have to keep moving forward in his great conclusion to understand what is so far from him. And then he keeps showing us how far it is by saying this. That which has been is far off. And deep, very deep. Who can find it out? Basically, this thing is so far away, so deep, we'll never make sense of it. Sounds a bit like, the book of Job. Where one of his friends say that this truth of who God is, it's a wisdom so deep, so far, no man can attain it. No effort on earth can be done to find it. Here's Kohelet echoing the same kind of language. It's not all human type of thinking. It makes sense. There's a depth of God. There's a truth out there too great for us, little insignificant human beings. And here's God saying that thing is very far off. But what exactly does he mean? Glad you asked. He's going to tell us now. I turned my heart to know and to search out and to seek wisdom and the scheme of things, and to know the wickedness of folly and the foolishness that is madness. Again, this language sounds familiar. We've seen some of these words in chapter 1 when he talked about all his studies, right? Looking into philosophies and other ideologies, all to make sense of life. Or as he puts it here, the scheme of things. How can life under the sun be palpable when everything's half out? I looked everywhere to make sense of it. Every philosophy possible, every religion, yet couldn't find it. So he's coming back to that again. He's coming back to that fact of even with wise, if I could say, biblical teachings, there's still some Hevel left. There's still something missing. Okay, but what does that change for me? What are you getting at here, Kohelet? He's going to tell us. And I find something more bitter than death. The woman whose heart is snare and nets, and whose hands are feathers. He who pleases God escapes her, but the sinner is taken by her. Daniel decided he found something. It's going to be important for later. It's almost like he's saying, here's my conclusion. Here's what I figured out, even though I can't figure out everything. And then he presents woman. And it's not just a woman per se, because she sounds a lot like that woman in Proverbs, which we've seen together on this channel. And those first couple of chapters where the father is warning the son about this seductive woman, this folly woman, who's trying to capture you and bring you into sin and literally into death. But I've said it before and I say it again, she seems to represent sin itself. How it wants to ensnare us. Because her house leads to death like sin does. That's what Quella is getting at here. He's again invoking more of the biblical wisdom, saying, this is what I figured out. There's this sin out there. And he puts the image of a woman to capture men. To bring them, be taken by her. In a sense, it's really to destruction, like it says in Proverbs. Yet there is an escape. There is a way out. He who pleases God. But here's the thing though, we've seen in these pages that it's not about what we do. Nor does God permit the reality that we can do stuff to be pleasing to God. It's always been about God's sovereignty and Him bringing grace to people, giving them palpableness, gain, if you will, to enjoy life here under the sun. It is a prerogative of God, not of man. That's what he's getting at. So, it's still God, in His sovereignty, delivering some and not all. I don't like that. Yet that is the way God speaks. You all know that saying from the Bible. David was a man after God's own heart. And we usually make the focus about David and how amazing he was, and that's why God loved him. Actually, that saying, that Hebrew saying, focuses more on God. A better way of translating it, a man from God's own heart, or a man God loves. Why was David chosen to be the king? Because God loved him. Because he was agreeable to God. Because God wanted him to be. Because God chose to enjoy this man. David has his part. But the prerogative is on God. Like it is here. He will deliver some. But the rest, as we've seen, will be ensnared. So that's the big conclusion. This is what he's learned while his studies. Even though there's some things that are still too far for him, one thing he got is there's these sinners captured by sin, brought to destruction. And that's when it comes back around and says this. Behold, this is what I found, says the preacher. Well, adding one thing to another, to find the scheme of things. More roads we've already seen. Like the conclusion here, this is what I found. He's going to repeat it yet one more time, actually. Showing us that it's almost like he's reconcluding or giving the same conclusion over and over and over again. Not like a preacher saying, okay, in conclusion, and a few minutes later, okay, in conclusion. You're just giving the same conclusion over and over again with more details. Which is what he's going to do. He gave us one conclusion, and he's going to come back around and give us the same conclusion, but with a different twist to it. More imagery. Different language. But I believe the same conclusion. A conclusion that has to do with a scheme of life. What's this life all about? Well, let's find out. Which my soul has sought repeatedly, but I have not found. One man among 1,000 I found. That's important. So he did find something. But a woman among all these I have not found. That sounds kind of sexist, right? It's like he's saying, among 1,000 men, I saw at least one that was worthy. Among the women, I found 0. They all suck. No, that's not what he's saying, actually. And the problem is, this verse is really difficult to translate properly. And I say this because the experts say that, and I'm not one. But all of the guys that I looked at all said that there's a different way of translating this verse. One connected to what we just saw before, that original conclusion. One that sounds kind of like this. What he found is, among 1,000 men, there's at least one that could escape the woman that was among these. Remember that woman from before? Who keeps capturing men and bringing them down to destruction over and over again? It sounds like he's saying the same thing but a different way. Among 1,000 men captured by this woman, only one escaped. Only a remnant, like God used to do. Always usually does. So that's his conclusion once again. And now for another time. As he says this, see, this alone I found, that God made man upright, but they have sought out many schemes. In other words, all have sinned and fall short of the glory of God. That's what he's kind of saying. When he can connect it back to the original conclusion, well, we saw that many get captured by the woman, but some escape. It's almost like Quayle saying that technically all deserve to be captured by a sin woman and brought back into destruction. Because again, all have sinned and fall short of the glory of God. All are under judgment. It is only those that God shows mercy to, through Jesus Christ, of course, we would have, through his sacrifice, that will know deliverance. Again, it's that one guy among the 1,000 captured by the woman. That's what he's trying to get at over and over again. Which is why we go back to the pocket, that reality, we're all sinners. All of us, without exception. So even if you try to live a wise life, following the biblical rules, it won't change anything. Because you're a sinner and under judgment. But God rescued us through Christ. See, that's the message of the Bible and of the gospel. Now maybe you're saying, I am saved. It's still a message for us. Because it reminds us, it's not about how you live your life, how faithful you are, how good you are as a believer. It's all about grace. Those agreeable to God, those who are favored by him, it's his prerogative, not ours. It is him being gracious and merciful and kind to us through Christ. And never about how good, faithful, obedient we are. It's still the same message. Say we are the one tasting grace while the rest of the world isn't. But it's the same message. It's all of grace, not of obedience. Because we are the sinners who flee from God. And left to ourselves, we keep doing the same thing. Not the same extent, but the same thing still. Because there's still a little sin in here, right? May that be a good and humbling reminder for us, dear brothers and sisters. On that note, be blessed.